Adam Taxin with Daniel Greenfield talking about his column for Tuesday, July 10th, 2012, which is Why the West Loves Lying to Itself About Islam. That's a pretty straightforward title, Daniel. You seem to suggest that there is a sunk cost and that this is some sort of Islamic illusion. Can you explain that whole concept as it relates to your article, and even the analogy to the Nigerian prince?
Well, to begin with, people think in terms of what do I have invested in this. They don't come to the situation that they've invested a lot into and treat it as a first-time event. So if they've had an assumption about it, if they've invested money, if they've invested a certain amount of their ego and their self-esteem into believing that something is a certain way, then it becomes much harder for them to deviate from that. And that is what's happened with Islam. Once you convince people into making a mild assumption, an initially limited assumption, once you get them to take that investment, then you can continue to lead them down the garden path to oblivion, which is what's happened here. With the Nigerian prince, the whole scam depends on constantly extracting more and more amounts of money in increments in the belief that there's going to be a larger payoff at the end. And the larger payoff starts being less and less relevant, because what really matters at that point is not feeling like you've been a complete idiot up till now.
True. And this is something that is not limited simply to the U.S. This is a problem in Europe, perhaps even more so, and perhaps even more so than Israel. Can you explain how they've fallen into this sort of trap? I mean, what started this at the first time? What is it about Islam? I mean, they're pretty straightforward. They have been a pretty brutal culture for centuries, for pretty much like 1,400 years. Why do people keep falling for it, or is it as cover for weakness?
Advantages to be gained, and we've built up a culture where we want to believe that this is so, and once we've reached the point where we want to believe that this is so, it's a hop, skip, and short leap to accepting it on a contingent basis, and once we've done that, it becomes much harder to deviate from that.
Is there any real hope, by the way, this is a little off topic, for being able to live compatibly with Islam?
Being able to do what?
Live compatibly with Islam, or is there no choice?
Certainly not with the one that we've got now.
I mean, so people are essentially this is a type of self-delusion. What is the psychology behind all of this? People can't admit they're wrong, or they will play against probability if there's a chance at the end that they won't be wrong. I mean, what's the psychological thing going on here?
Well, every con works by feeding it to somebody's worldview and to somebody's expectation, obviously, that there's a reward. But there's also the idea that a lot of people want to be the good person. This is what a lot of cons play out. They don't just directly go for the greed. What they go for is the idea that I want to be a good person and I want to profit. So with Islam, for the left, certainly the big appeal is that you can be a good person, you can promote coexistence and all that, and you can profit while having your own friendly domestic Muslim population that will support you to the hilt.
So it's as if they think it's just another type of restaurant to go to, essentially, without taking a very superficial assessment of Islam, is what you're saying.
They don't really see Islam for what it is. They see Islam for what they want it to be. They don't really see other cultures for what they are either. They think of everything in relation to their own needs and their own desires, which is how most people do things, really.
Yeah, you can't blame Islam for that. They're pretty upfront about what they want. I mean, there are all sorts of images talking about how
they're not that upfront about it. I mean, if you read the Quran, if you listen to a few preachers, they're upfront. But the Muslims that these people actually interact with are not coming in there and saying, this is what we're going to do. What they come in there and say is, Islam is just like all the other religions. It's friendly, it's tolerant. We love peace, we love social justice. We care about the same things you do.
Fair enough.
The message that they hear.
Yeah, I stand corrected. I guess I didn't really make my point quite ideally there. I guess if people want to have the information about what's really going on, they could find it, but I guess willful blindness is the key to all of this, it seems like.
most people accept what they're told, and that includes the decision makers and the so-called thought leaders.
Finally, can you talk about how this relates to Israel specifically?
The same thing has been going on in Israel. You have constant talk about the two-state solution. Everything comes down to how can we possibly make the two-state solution work? And the two-state solution has so far solved absolutely nothing except the problem of how to make the Middle East, and particularly Israel, into a much worse place, and how to kill a whole lot of Jews. But the two-state solution is an article of faith because everybody has been committed to it. Both parties have committed themselves to it, so now the task is making it somehow work.
Daniel, thanks as always for your time. The column, again, is Why the West Loves Lying to Itself About Islam, and it can be found at sultankanish.blogspot.com.